So, Debi, a second ago you mentioned the Darzi report. What have you got?
I did indeed, and this is where things, everything joins up, doesn't it? So let's look at The Independent, who ran this article about Tory austerity and shake-ups have left NHS in critical condition. Well, the Darzi report, Lord Darzi, of course, who was a Labour MP, a Labour minister under Gordon Brown. He's independent now. He's a surgeon. This report that he was commissioned to do, so what does it say? Well, we've had no progress in early cancer diagnosis. In fact, our cancer survival rates are the lowest in Europe. Can I just also highlight that this is an NHS review, not a social care review. And that's very, very different. And really, all of the things that he said, that hospitals are getting too much money, the community's not getting enough, it's all the Tories' fault. Basically, I believe this report, which has been compiled in 8 weeks, believe it or not, 8 weeks, is basically a green light to Keir Starmer to digitise and change and rebuild the whole of the NHS. So Digital Health actually did report that it seems to me as though they've given the green light to Keir Starmer, because according to the Lord Darzi report, this has given him every reason to digitise the NHS, a digital NHS. Well, you can find the Independent report on the website, but I would like to say that the Independent report of the front page, which you'll see on the next slide, is over 600 pages long. So I will be reporting more on this in the future. But they're talking about turbocharging the time frame for digitisation. They say the NHS is in serious trouble and we can't rely on it. Well, we knew that already, didn't we? The conclusion basically was that the NHS's health has deteriorated. The nation's health has deteriorated. Well, I wonder why the nation's health has deteriorated. I can point them in a few directions. But despite the challenges, the NHS's vital signs remain strong. Well, I see that as a contradiction in terms, personally. And we know that Tony Blair has been very keen on preparing the NHS for an AI era. We've done a lot of work on this before. If you want to go back and have a look at the news on the 23rd of August 2024, we were talking about it. And thanks to Baroness Charlotte Owen, I found this debate that took place on December the 19th, 2023, where Lord Alan Hallam was asking the government what measures were really being put into place to mitigate the risk of people sharing their medical data to third parties through the NHS App. Now, this is a very interesting discussion. On the next slide, you'll see that Lord Markham, and I just want to tell you that Lord Markham, he was made a life peer in 2022. He's the Parliamentary Undersecretary for Social Care. He was formerly an unpaid government junior. He set up the charity project Little Boat and delivered PPE and other essential equipment, no revolving doors there. And he also co-founded Signpost, which is spelled CIGN, by the way, CIGNPOST, Diagnostics, and he works with the elite in express PCR testing. So big revolving door then, but he is trying to reassure everyone that not to worry because we have to use a login detail and everything's really secure. So let's jump on then to the next slide from Lord Turnberg, who highlights the need to use data for medical research. Or yes, how important it is to use a medical research data. And Lord Turnberg, who's replying for the government, says, yes, we must have balance. But then Baroness Brinton, she said, well, what about happens when, such as in financial data, when it was sold to subsidiaries and contractors and third parties? Is this going to be the same as our health data? And she's also got concerns regarding India and the USA. But Lord Markham again reassured her that don't worry because the GPs, NHS and hospital, they're the data controllers and it will remain with them. Well, my argument is that we know that the NHS is basically a public-private partnership. So your data is going to who? To which companies? I don't know. So then further on, Baroness McIntosh was asking, well, what are we doing about sharing data for clinical trials with Europe? And Lord Markham was very keen to remind her that this was very important for the life sciences agenda. And the UK data is the envy of the world, I bet it is, and that 90% of UK data has been digitised, whereas only in Germany, 1%. And then the debate goes on to Baroness Merron, who was talking at last about safety. And she was talking about domestic abuse and what happens if this sensitive information that's sitting on your phone or your device could be accessed by partners or spouses or anybody in association with family courts, for example. And Lord Markham came up with a very strange response and said, well, don't worry, it's all very safe, because even if you hold somebody else's head into it, or if somebody's eyes are closed, or if someone's asleep, you can't get in to the app. But he went on to say that safeguards are in place and they were looking at it. But then I went to look at Refuge, because I just took a little break in the debate, because Refuge, the charity, have issued a letter to the government urging survivors of domestic abuse to contact their GP services immediately to request that their online medical sharing be switched off. They have deep concerns that perpetrators will abuse and utilise the records for abuse purposes. They also urge that they should delete the NHS app until there's better safeguarding. And I would say to all members, actually, if you're a member, tune in for extra, because we'll be talking a bit more about this, because it seems that Hertfordshire Partnership don't appear to have received the memo, because they've actually launched their own app called We Protect for victims of domestic abuse. But quite clearly, this opens up a huge debate on how sensitive is your data, and if you're elderly, for example, and carers, who gets access to your medical records. So back to the Lords, and we'll go and see Baroness Bull this time, who's making the point of, if you have private medicine, do your private medical records get integrated into this whole digitisation of medical records? Because what if you need A&E care? What if you've been abroad for surgery, perhaps? What if you've had private medical care and that's not in your records? How does that equate if you need accident and emergency, which is an NHS service? And Lord Markham replied to reassure her that the NHS Federated Data Platform has got loads of data from loads of places, and don't worry, basically, nothing to see here. But he also said that, you own your data, you own your paperwork. Well, I don't think you do, actually, because you can get copies of your medical records, but ultimately the originals stay with the NHS. And finally, coming full circle back to Baroness Owen of Alderley Edge, which is where all of this started in the first place. And she asked in Tech of the Future, because she's very interested in the future and she's very into technology. Well, she didn't have long to wait to have an answer to her question, because the UKAuthority have just announced that the NHS App will include a digital health check. So here we go. This is the first stage. This is the key to the door. The NHS App is not convenience. It is control. And they say that 1.2 million have been accessing their medical records every day. And just to finish this segment, I want to thank Mixmaster Mirage yet again, who brought up this wonderful graphic, Delete the NHS App. It's your choice. If you don't trust the NHS app, if you feel that your data is being shared with people that you don't know, you might choose to delete it. However, when I went to show the little bit of video that Sam kindly did for UK Column on how to delete the video, it's only 18 seconds long, apparently it was warned on X for adult content. So I'll leave that with you. So scrap the app trap. It's your choice, your decision.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much for that. And of course, we do need to make the point that this issue of sharing data with international partners, in inverted commas, was something that was going to be particularly enabled by legislation that the Tory party was pushing through, that they failed to get through before the general election was called. But don't worry, because the Starmer regime is busy bringing that legislation forward again. It's got a new title, not so different from the last one, but it's basically going to have the same content, possibly even more enabling than the Tories had intended. That seems to be the way that the Starmer regime is going. Okay, let's move on then to